The town of Halcyon Ridge always looked calm from a distance. Soft rolling hills stretching under a pale sky. A white church tower rising above quiet rooftops. One narrow road curving past a faded roadside diner before disappearing into tall whispering pine trees. Nothing about the town suggested secrets. Nothing about it suggested endings. It looked like the kind of place where every story was simple and every goodbye gentle. Yet on a cold autumn morning the entire town gathered beside a small hillside cemetery. They stood closer than usual, as if the air itself carried something fragile that might break if anyone moved too quickly. At the center of them all stood a young woman named Aloan Thrice. She did not cry the way people expected. She did not collapse into someone's arms. She did not hide her face from the world. She simply watched the wooden casket lower slowly into the ground with a stillness that felt almost unreal. As if her body had forgotten how to move. As if time around her had thinned into silence. And then, just before the first shovel of soil touched the lid, she smiled. Not a wide smile. Not happiness. Only the faintest curve of her lips. Soft and private. Like a secret meant for no one else. At the exact same moment, a single tear slipped down her cheek. Smile and tear together. Hope and grief tangled into one quiet, impossible expression. Several people noticed. No one spoke. Because the man inside the casket had been the most loved soul in Halcyon Ridge. A retired paramedic named Corvin Hale. The man who fixed broken fences without being asked. Who remembered birthdays that even families forgot. Who once drove 3 hours through a blinding snowstorm just to deliver medicine to a stranger he would never meet again. Men like that were not supposed to leave mysteries behind. They were supposed to leave peace. Warm stories. Clear endings. But Aloan's smile made the air feel different. Like a hidden door had opened somewhere far beneath the surface of the day. The pastor's voice drifted gently through the wind. Soft words about rest. About heaven. About journeys ending in light. Most people listened. Aloan did not. Her eyes stayed fixed on the casket. Unblinking. Focused. As if she were waiting for something that had not happened yet. Inside the pocket of her dark coat. Her fingers pressed tightly around a small folded piece of paper. No one knew about the note. No one knew she had found it only hours before the funeral. Hidden inside an old metal toolbox in Corvin's garage. Taped beneath the shallow tray where he kept spare screws and rusted nails from years of quiet repairs. The handwriting on the paper had been careful but rushed. As if written by someone who understood time was running out. 3 short lines only. If anything happens to me, do not trust the silence. Find the blue door before winter. No name beneath. No explanation. No date. Just those words. At first she believed it was something old. A forgotten reminder. Maybe instructions for fixing something in the house. But Corvin had died the night before. Sudden heart failure, the doctor said. Peaceful. Quick. Nothing suspicious. Except Corvin never left things unfinished. And he never wrote in riddles. Aloan had read the note again and again until the paper felt warm in her shaking hands. Each reading made the same question grow louder inside her chest. What blue door? Now as the coffin settled into the earth. That question pulsed stronger than grief itself. Because beneath the sadness, beneath the shock, there was something else rising quietly. Certainty. Corvin had not been afraid of dying. He had been afraid of something being hidden after he was gone. The wind moved through the cemetery grass in slow silver waves. Car doors clicked softly in the distance. Someone cleared their throat and tried not to cry. Life continuing in small ordinary sounds. Aloan finally blinked. Her smile faded. But the tear still shone on her skin. A woman standing beside her whispered gently, "You holding up okay, honey?" Aloan nodded once. Too quickly. Too smooth. The kind of nod people give when the truth is too heavy to carry into words. Because how could she explain? That grief was not the only thing she felt. There was also anticipation. And beneath that, fear. Not fear of loss, but fear of what she might discover if she followed the message left behind for her. The pastor finished speaking. People stepped forward one by one, dropping white flowers onto the casket, murmuring quiet goodbyes carried away by the wind. When it was Alohan's turn, she did not place flowers. Instead, she slipped something small into the grave, hidden from every eye except the drifting autumn leaves. The folded note. For a moment her hand hovered above the open earth, frozen in the cold air, as if letting go of that fragile paper meant stepping onto a path she could never leave again. Then her fingers opened. The note disappeared into shadow. Her hand trembled for the first time all morning. Behind her, a pickup truck door slammed hard enough to echo across the hillside. Heads turned. Voices paused. At the far edge of the cemetery stood a man no one recognized. Tall, still, wearing a dark coat untouched by dust. He carried no flowers. He spoke to no one. He was watching Alohan. Not the grave. Not the crowd. Only her. Their eyes met for less than a heartbeat. But something in his expression felt deeply wrong. Not sadness. Not curiosity. Recognition. As if he already knew what she had just done. Alohan's breath caught inside her throat. When she looked again, the stranger had already turned away, walking slowly toward the road without saying a single word. A cold feeling slid down her spine, because strangers did not come to small-town funerals, not without a reason. And something inside her whispered. This moment was only the beginning. Hours later, Halcyon Ridge returned to its familiar quiet rhythm. Dishes touched softly inside kitchen sinks. A radio hummed somewhere along Main Street. The diner sign buzzed in the cooling evening light. Grief in small towns never arrived loudly. It settled like dust. Slow. Invisible. Everywhere. Alohan sat alone on the wooden steps behind Corvin's house, watching the sky turn deep orange beyond the trees. She had not gone home. Not yet. Inside the house everything still smelled like motor oil and peppermint tea. His strange favorite combination. She kept expecting to hear his boots cross the floor, to hear his low warm voice calling her kiddo the way he always had. Even though she was grown now. Silence answered instead. A silence too complete, too clean. Do not trust the silence. The words returned again. Her hands tightened around emptiness. The absence of the note now heavier than the paper itself. If anything happens to me. Something had happened. Yet no one was asking questions. The doctor signed forms. Neighbors delivered casseroles. Life prepared to continue. Too easy. Too fast. Corvin Hale deserved more than a quiet ending. Deep down, Alohan knew he had trusted her to understand that. A screen door creaked softly behind her. Old Mrs. Calder stepped onto the porch, moving slowly, carrying 2 warm mugs of coffee. She handed one over without speaking. They sat together watching the last light fade, steam rising between them into the cold air. After a long silence, Mrs. Calder spoke in a voice worn gentle by years. Your uncle trusted you more than anyone. Alohan swallowed. He trusted everyone. Not like this. Another quiet pause. Then almost casually, as if afraid of the sound of her own words. Did he ever mention a blue door? The mug froze halfway to Alohan's lips. For a moment, she could not breathe, because she had told no one about the note. No one at all. She turned slowly. What did you say? Mrs. Calder kept her eyes on the darkening trees, like she was looking at something far in the past. Just an old story, she murmured. From before you came here. People used to whisper about a place beyond the highway. Something hidden. Something better left alone. But that was years ago. Long before Corvin stopped taking night calls. Alohan's heartbeat grew louder with every word. Why are you telling me this? Mrs. Calder finally looked at her, and fear lived clearly in her eyes. Because he asked me one thing. If anything ever happened to him. I was supposed to make sure you left Halcyon Ridge before the first snow. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Leave town. Why? Mrs. Calder shook her head slowly. I never knew. And I hoped I would never have to find out. The porch light flickered on above them, casting long shadows across the quiet yard. Night settling in around the house. Aloan felt the silence of the town pressing closer. Thicker. Heavier. Like the quiet was not empty at all, but watching. Waiting. Somewhere far down the road. A car engine started. Low. Patient. Unhurried. She thought of the stranger at the cemetery. The way he had looked at her. Certain. As if she were already part of something she did not understand. Find the blue door before winter. Leave town before the snow. 2 warnings. Pulling her in opposite directions. Her chest tightened with a truth she could no longer ignore. Whatever Corvin tried to protect, it was still here. And now, it was reaching for her. Aloan stared into the darkness beyond the trees. Her pulse slowly changing into something new. Not grief. Decision. Because running away would mean never knowing why he smiled the last time she saw him alive. Never knowing what waited behind that blue door. Never knowing why a stranger watched her like a secret already uncovered. She placed the untouched coffee beside her on the step. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, but unbreakable. I am not leaving. Mrs. Calder closed her eyes slowly, as if she had feared those words all along. Then winter will come sooner than you think, she whispered. The wind moved once more through Halcyon Ridge, carrying the faint scent of distant snow. And somewhere beyond the highway, hidden in darkness, a door painted blue waited silently, holding a secret strong enough to follow a good man into the grave. The only question left: what would happen to the girl who chose to open it? Night settled slowly over Halcyon Ridge, the kind of night that felt heavier than darkness alone. Clouds covered the moon. Streetlights hummed in long empty stretches of road. And the quiet carried a strange tension, as if the town itself was holding its breath. Inside Corvin's house, Aloan stood in the doorway of the garage, unable to step fully in, unable to walk away. The familiar smell of metal dust and old wood wrapped around her like memory. Every tool still rested exactly where he had left it. Every surface carried the quiet order he believed in. Nothing looked disturbed. Nothing looked wrong. Yet the note had been real. The warning had been real. And Mrs. Calder's fear had been real. Which meant something in this ordinary garage was not ordinary at all. Aloan finally stepped forward, her shoes scraping softly against the concrete floor, the sound echoing louder than it should. She moved toward the metal toolbox where she had found the message, her hands hovering above it, almost expecting the box to move on its own. Slowly she opened it again. Nails. Screws. A measuring tape worn smooth with age. Nothing unusual. But this time, she looked deeper. Her fingers traced the inside edges, the underside, every hidden corner. And then she noticed something she had missed before. A thin scratch along the bottom panel. Too straight to be an accident. Too clean to be old. Her pulse quickened. She pressed gently against the metal. At first nothing happened. Then with a soft click, a hidden compartment shifted open beneath the tray. Aloan froze. Inside the narrow space lay a small object wrapped in cloth. Carefully folded. Carefully hidden. Her hands trembled as she lifted it out. The cloth felt older than the house. Faded blue. Edges worn thin. When she unfolded it, a small brass key slipped into her palm. Cold. Heavy. Real. Attached to it was a paper tag. Yellowed with time. Only 2 words written in the same careful, hurried handwriting as the note. North Road. A chill moved through her chest. North Road was not really a road anymore. Just an abandoned stretch of pavement beyond the highway. Closed years ago after a landslide cut through the hills. No houses. No lights. Nothing but trees and broken asphalt. No reason for a key. Unless something had been hidden where no one would think to look. Aloan closed her fingers tightly around the brass, trying to slow the sudden rush of thoughts. Find the blue door before winter. She had believed the message was a warning. Now it felt more like instructions. Behind her, The wooden door connecting the garage to the house creaked softly. Aloan spun around, heart racing, but the doorway was empty, only darkness filling the hall. She waited, listening. Nothing. Just the refrigerator humming somewhere inside. Just the distant wind brushing the siding. Still, the feeling of being watched refused to fade. The stranger at the cemetery returned to her mind. That quiet certainty in his eyes. As if he knew about the key. As if he knew where she would go next. Her grip tightened. If someone else was searching for the same place. Time suddenly mattered. She wrapped the key back in the blue cloth, slipped it into her coat pocket, and turned off the garage light. Darkness filled the space instantly. Thick. Complete. For a brief moment, she felt as if the house itself were trying to keep her from leaving. Then she stepped outside into the cold night air. The sky smelled like coming snow. Sharp and distant. Mrs. Calder's warning echoed again. Leave before the first snow. Aloan looked toward the highway instead. I am not leaving. The decision felt irreversible now. Like crossing an invisible line. Minutes later, her old car rolled quietly down Main Street. Headlights cutting through empty darkness. Most windows in town were already dark. People sleeping. Dreaming ordinary dreams. Unaware that something long hidden was beginning to move again. The road curved past the silent diner. Past the church. Past the last row of houses. Then only trees remained. Tall. Black. Endless. The highway appeared ahead like a pale ribbon under the night sky. Aloan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. A strange mix of fear and purpose filling her chest. She had never driven to North Road at night. No one did. Stories surrounded that place. Half-remembered whispers adults stopped telling when children entered the room. Accidents. Disappearances. Lights seen where no power lines existed. She had always believed they were only stories. Until now. Her tires crossed onto the empty highway. The sound suddenly louder in the silence. Miles passed with no other cars. No movement. Only darkness stretching in every direction. Then she saw it. A rusted metal barrier on the side of the road. Half fallen. Barely visible. Behind it. A narrow broken path disappearing into trees. North Road. Her breath caught. For a moment. She almost kept driving. Because turning onto that road meant accepting everything was real. The note. The key. The fear. But the memory of Corvin's smile the last time she saw him alive rose clearly in her mind. Not afraid. Not confused. Certain. Slowly. She turned the wheel. The car bumped over cracked pavement. Branches scraping softly along the sides. The headlights revealing pieces of a road long forgotten. Grass pushed through broken asphalt. Old warning signs leaned sideways. Paint faded into ghosts of letters. Each second felt stretched. Too quiet. Too still. As if the world beyond the trees had disappeared. After several minutes, the road curved sharply. And then, her headlights touched something unexpected. A structure hidden among the pines. Small. Square. Almost blending into the darkness. Aloan's heart began to pound. She slowed the car, rolling forward inch by inch. It looked like an old roadside utility building. The kind no one notices. Concrete walls. Flat roof. One single door at the front. Painted blue. Her breath stopped completely. The color was faded. Peeling. But unmistakable even in weak light. The blue door. For a long moment. She could not move. All the questions. All the fear. All the warnings. Had led to this quiet forgotten place in the woods. Snow had not come yet. Which meant she was not too late. But another thought crept in slowly. Cold and sharp. If she had found it this easily. Someone else could too. Her eyes searched the darkness beyond the headlights. Trees. Shadows. Nothing more. Still. The feeling of being watched returned stronger than before. She turned off the engine. Silence rushed in instantly. Deep enough to hear her own heartbeat. Her hand moved to the coat pocket, fingers closing around the wrapped brass key. This was the moment Corvin had prepared her for, though she still did not know why. She stepped out of the car, cold air wrapped around her, the smell of pine and distant snow filling her lungs. Each step toward the building felt unreal, like walking inside a dream she could not wake from. The blue paint looked darker up close, scratched, weathered by years of storms. A simple metal lock waited beneath the handle. Aloan unfolded the cloth slowly, the brass key catching a thin line of starlight. Her hand shook, not from cold, but from the weight of what might be waiting on the other side. If anything happens to me, do not trust the silence. The forest around her was completely silent now. No wind, no insects, nothing, as if the world itself were listening. She lifted the key toward the lock, and suddenly, from somewhere deep in the trees behind her, a branch snapped. Sharp, clear, close. Aloan spun around, heart slamming against her ribs. Darkness between the trees, too thick to see through. But she was no longer alone. Aloan stood frozen beside the blue door, the brass key trembling between her fingers, her breath shallow in the cold night air. The sound of the snapping branch still echoed in her mind. Too close to ignore, too real to be an animal moving through the woods. The darkness between the trees felt different now. Not empty, not quiet. Watching. She tried to listen past the pounding of her own heart, hoping for another sound. Footsteps, breathing, anything that would reveal who or what was there. Nothing came. Only silence again, thick and waiting. Do not trust the silence. The warning returned with sudden force. Aloan swallowed slowly, forcing herself to think. If someone had followed her, standing still in the open made her an easy target. But running back to the car meant leaving the door unopened, leaving Corvin's secret buried forever. Her fingers tightened around the key. Fear pulled her backward, but something stronger held her in place. Trust. Not in the night. Not in the silence. In Corvin. He had hidden the key, hidden the message. Trusted she would come. That meant whatever waited behind the blue door mattered more than fear. Aloan turned back toward the lock, her movements careful, controlled, as if sudden motion might wake the forest itself. The metal felt colder now, almost biting against her skin. She slid the key into the lock. For a heartbeat. Nothing happened. Then a soft click broke the silence. The sound felt louder than thunder. Aloan hesitated, her hand resting on the handle. This was the last moment to walk away. The last moment before everything changed. She thought of the stranger at the cemetery, the fear in Mrs. Calder's eyes, the note sinking into the grave. Find the blue door before winter. Slowly, she pushed the door open. Darkness waited inside, deeper than the night outside. A faint smell drifted out. Dust. Old paper. Something metallic. She stepped across the threshold. The air inside felt still, untouched for years, as if time had stopped the moment the door last closed. Her hand searched the wall, fingers brushing rough concrete. Then she found a switch. A weak yellow light flickered on overhead, buzzing softly. The room revealed itself piece by piece. Small, bare, concrete floor. No windows. But the walls were not empty. Shelves covered them from end to end, filled with boxes, folders, old recording tapes, stacks of labeled envelopes. Not storage. Records. Aloan's breath caught. Corvin had not hidden money. Not weapons. Not anything ordinary. He had hidden information. She stepped deeper into the room, shoes echoing softly. Each box carried handwritten dates, some going back more than 20 years. Her pulse quickened. Corvin had been a paramedic. He had seen accidents, emergencies, people at their most vulnerable. What had he been collecting? Her fingers hovered over one folder before finally opening it. Inside were photographs. Not family photos. Not memories. Crash sites. Hospital rooms. Faces of injured strangers. And beneath each photo, notes written in Corvin's careful handwriting. Times. Locations. Short observations. But one detail made her stomach tighten. Many of the names were circled in red. She flipped to another folder. Then another. The same pattern repeated. Accidents. Illness. Disappearances. All connected by thin red lines drawn across pages. Linking dates. Places. People. Like pieces of a puzzle no one else knew existed. A cold realization formed slowly. Corvin had not just been helping people. He had been investigating something. Her hands began to shake. Why? From the far corner of the room, a small desk waited under the dim light. Unlike the dusty shelves, the desk surface was clean. Recently used. Aloan approached carefully. At the center lay a cassette recorder. Old but intact. Beside it, one single tape labeled in dark ink. For Aloan. Her throat tightened instantly. He knew. He knew she would come here. Knew she would find this place. Her fingers brushed the recorder. Warmth of memory flooding in. Late nights in the garage. Music playing softly while he worked. She pressed the play button. For a second. Only static. Then Corvin's voice filled the small concrete room. Older. Tired. But unmistakably calm. Kiddo. If you are hearing this. Then I ran out of time. Aloan's eyes filled with tears she could not stop. I wanted to keep you away from this. He continued softly. But keeping you safe means telling you the truth. A pause of quiet breathing. For years I thought the accidents were random. Just bad luck. Bad roads. Bad timing. But they kept repeating. Same locations. Same people connected in ways no report ever explained. Another pause. Longer this time. Someone has been choosing who gets help. And who does not. Aloan felt the air leave her lungs. I tried to report it. He said. But the records disappeared. Witnesses changed stories. Doors closed. That is when I understood. This is bigger than one town. Static crackled briefly. If anything happens to me, you must take the evidence to someone outside Halcyon Ridge. Someone who cannot be silenced. Her heart pounded painfully. Do not trust the silence. Because silence here is not empty. It is controlled. The recorder hummed softly. There is one name I could never prove. But it appears every time. Hidden. Untouched. If I am gone, look for the man who never signs his reports. Aloan's mind flashed instantly to the stranger at the cemetery. Corvin's voice lowered. Almost a whisper. I am sorry for pulling you into this. But you are the only person I trust to finish it. Another long breath. Whatever you do, do not let them know you found the blue door. The tape clicked softly, reaching its end. Silence returned to the room. But it was no longer empty silence. It was full of truth. Full of danger. Aloan stood motionless. Tears sliding down her face unnoticed. Corvin had not died peacefully. He had been stopped. The realization settled heavy in her chest. Everything in this room, every photo, every note, was proof of something hidden in plain sight. And now, she was the only person who knew. A faint sound came from outside the building. Soft, careful, footsteps on gravel. Aloan's head lifted slowly, fear returning sharper than before. Whoever was in the woods was no longer hiding. They were coming to the door. Her eyes scanned the room quickly, searching for anything useful, anything that could help her escape. But there was only one entrance, one way out. The blue door behind her. The handle moved slightly. Someone testing it. Her heartbeat roared in her ears. If they entered, everything would end here. The recorder. The evidence. Her. For one brief, desperate moment, she wished she had listened. Had left town. Had never opened the door. But it was too late for wishes. The handle began to turn slowly, and the light above her flickered once, as if even the room itself was afraid of what was about to step inside. The handle turned slowly, metal brushing metal with a soft, patient sound that felt louder than a scream in the small concrete room. Aloan could not breathe. Her body stood frozen between the shelves of evidence and the only exit that now belonged to someone else. For a single fragile second, nothing happened. Then the blue door opened inward. Cold night air slipped inside first, followed by silence, heavy and deliberate. A figure stepped across the threshold. The same tall man from the cemetery. Dark coat, still expression, eyes that looked as calm as quiet water and just as deep. He closed the door gently behind him. Not rushed, not afraid, certain. The faint click of the latch echoed through the room like the ending of something final. Aloan's heartbeat pounded so hard it hurt, but she forced herself not to step back, not to show fear, because Corvin's voice still lived in the air around her. Do not let them know you found the blue door. The man's gaze moved slowly across the shelves, across the recorder, across the open folders in her shaking hands. Nothing in his face showed surprise, only confirmation. So he said softly, "You found it." His voice carried no anger, no warmth, just quiet acknowledgement. Aloan swallowed, trying to keep her voice steady. "Who are you?" A small pause rested between them. "Someone who tried to help your uncle." He answered. The lie felt gentle, practiced. She shook her head slightly. No, because deep inside, she already knew the truth. Corvin had said it clearly. Look for the man who never signs his reports. Her eyes locked onto his, and for the first time, something cold flickered behind his calm. "You were there," she whispered. Every time. Another silence. Longer now. The room felt smaller with each passing second. Air thinning. Truth rising. Finally, the man exhaled slowly. "Your uncle was a good person," he said. "Good people make difficult situations messy." That was not an answer. That was avoidance. Aloan's fear began to change shape. Still sharp. Still real. But no longer paralyzing. Because grief was stronger than fear. And love was stronger than silence. "What did you do to him?" The question hung between them. Heavy. Unmovable. For the first time. The man looked almost tired. "I did nothing," he said quietly. He simply reached a point where accidents become inevitable. The words felt cold enough to freeze the air. Accidents. Like the photographs. Like the names circled in red. "You choose who lives," Aloan said, her voice shaking with rising anger. "Who gets help? Who disappears?" He did not deny it. Some outcomes must be guided. He replied, very calmly, very gently, as if explaining whether communities survive because difficult decisions stay unseen. Aloan felt something inside her chest break open. That is not survival. That is murder. Silence followed. But this silence felt different. Not empty. Not controlled. Alive. Because truth had finally been spoken out loud. The man studied her face carefully, almost with curiosity. "Your uncle believed someone pure should carry the truth forward," he said. "I hoped he was wrong." A slow step closer. "You are young. You can still walk away from this. Leave the evidence. Forget this room. Live a quiet life." His voice softened slightly. That is what he wanted most. For a moment, the offer felt dangerously real. A life without fear. Without running. Without shadows in the woods. Just ordinary mornings. Ordinary years. Peace. Her heart ached at the thought, because she knew it was true. Corvin had wanted that for her. But he had still left the message. Still left the key. Still trusted her to come. Which meant something mattered more than safety. Tears blurred her vision. But her voice became steady. "If I walk away, more people die." The man said nothing. And in that silence, She understood the truth completely. He believed he was necessary. Believed control was kindness. Believed hidden harm was protection. People like that never stopped. They only waited. Aloan reached slowly toward the desk, her fingers closing around the cassette tape. His eyes followed the movement. Sharp now. You will not leave this place with that, he said quietly. Fear surged again, cold and electric. But beneath it, something stronger rose. Courage born from grief. You are wrong, she whispered. Because I am not alone. A small sound broke the silence outside. Distant at first, then clearer. Engines. More than one. Headlights flashed faintly through the cracks around the door. The man's expression changed for the first time. Not panic, but calculation. You told someone, he said. Aloan's heart pounded. Half terror, half hope. She had not been sure the message sent from Corvin's old emergency radio would reach anyone. Not sure anyone outside Halcyon Ridge would listen. But she had tried. And now, the night outside was no longer empty. Red and blue light began to flicker faintly against the concrete walls. Soft. Growing. Sirens still distant. But coming closer. The man closed his eyes briefly, as if listening to a song only he could hear. When he opened them again, the calm had returned. This will not end the way you think, he said softly. Maybe not. Aloan answered. But it ends tonight. For the first time. Uncertainty lived in the space between them. Footsteps approached outside. Voices. Radios. Real. Loud. Unstoppable. The silence of Halcyon Ridge was breaking. The man looked at her one last time. Not angry. Not afraid. Almost proud. Your uncle chose well, he said quietly. Then he stepped back from the door, hands slowly rising, as bright light flooded the room, and the hidden years of silence finally shattered. Aloan's knees nearly gave way, relief crashing through her body all at once. But she stayed standing, because this moment was not only rescue. It was proof. Proof that truth could survive fear. That one voice could break controlled silence. That Corvin's faith in her had not been misplaced. Outside, snow began to fall softly through the flashing lights. Winter arriving at last. But this time, it did not feel like an ending. It felt like something clean. Something honest. Something free. Aloan stepped out of the blue doorway into the cold night, carrying the evidence, carrying the truth, carrying the final piece of the story he could not finish. And behind her, the door that held so many secrets remained open, empty at last. Morning came slowly to Halcyon Ridge, not with color, not with warmth, but with a pale quiet light that revealed everything the night had tried to hide. Snow rested gently across rooftops, along empty streets, over the silent hillside cemetery where fresh earth marked Corvin's grave. The town looked the same as it always had, but nothing inside it was the same anymore. Police vehicles still lined the broken edge of North Road, their deep tire marks cutting through the new snow like proof that something hidden had finally been uncovered. Word traveled fast in small places, faster than truth. Faster than understanding. By sunrise, everyone knew something had happened. But no one knew the full story. Not yet. Aloan sat on the wooden steps behind the house again. The same place she had sat the night before. The same place where everything had begun to change. Snowflakes drifted quietly around her, melting against the sleeves of Corvin's old coat wrapped tightly over her shoulders. She had not slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the recorder, heard his voice calling her kiddo one last time. Not afraid, not angry, only certain. Inside the house, soft movement echoed as officers carefully carried out boxes of evidence. Folders, tapes, photographs, years of hidden truth finally touching daylight. Each box felt like a heartbeat leaving the walls, taking the silence with it. Mrs. Calder opened the screen door slowly and stepped outside, 2 mugs of coffee warming her hands. She sat beside Aloan without speaking, just like the night before. For a long time. They watched the snow fall together. "Is it over?" Mrs. Calder asked softly. Aloan thought about the blue door, about the man's calm voice, about the red circles around so many names. Over was a complicated word. The danger had ended, but the truth was only beginning. "It is finished here," she answered quietly. "But not everywhere." Mrs. Calder nodded as if she understood more than she said. "You stayed," she whispered. "Yes." Another silence, gentler this time. "Your uncle knew you would," she said. The words settled deep in Aloan's chest, warm and painful at the same time, because courage did not feel strong. It felt like loss, like carrying something heavy that would never fully disappear. Across the yard, a government sedan waited with its engine running, breath of white smoke rising into the cold air. "They will want you to leave for a while," Mrs. Calder said. "Somewhere safe." Aloan watched the drifting snow. Safe. The word felt different now. Safety was not hiding, not silence, not pretending nothing was wrong. Safety was truth in the open, even when it hurt. "I will go for a little while," she said. "But I am coming back. To this town. To this house. To the life Corvin built with quiet kindness." Mrs. Calder smiled faintly through tired eyes. "Good," she whispered. "Halcyon Ridge will need someone who knows the truth." Footsteps approached across the snow. An officer stopping a respectful distance away. "They are ready for you," he said gently. Aloan nodded once. Slow. Certain. She stood, the cold air sharp in her lungs, the world feeling wider than it had yesterday. Before walking toward the waiting car, she turned toward the distant cemetery hill. Snow covered the fresh soil now. Soft. Peaceful. For the first time since the funeral, she let herself truly feel the goodbye. Not the shock. Not the mystery. Just the love. Tears filled her eyes. But this time, there was no confusion inside them. Only gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered into the quiet morning. The wind moved lightly across the hill, carrying nothing back. Yet somehow, she felt heard. Because endings were strange things. They looked like silence. But sometimes, they were only the moment before truth finally spoke. Months passed. Winter loosened its hold. Snow melting into cold rivers that ran beside the highway. Trees slowly remembering green. Far from Halcyon Ridge, in a quiet federal building filled with careful voices and closed doors, Aloan told the story again and again. Every detail. Every name. Every photograph. Some people listened with shock. Some with doubt. Some with the heavy stillness of people realizing how close silence had come to winning. Investigations spread outward. Beyond one town. Beyond one road. Hidden patterns began to surface in other places. Other accidents. Other missing reports. The truth was larger than anyone wanted. But it was finally visible. And visible truth could no longer hide inside blue doors. Through it all, Aloan carried one small thing with her. The cassette tape. Not as evidence, but as memory. On quiet nights, she played the final message again, letting Corvin's calm voice fill the empty spaces of unfamiliar rooms. Not pulling her backward into grief, guiding her forward. Because love did not end in graves. It changed shape, became direction, became courage. Spring arrived gently in Halcyon Ridge. Wildflowers pushing through thawed soil. The dinosign buzzing back to life. Children's laughter returning to streets that had felt too quiet all winter. On a warm, clear morning, a familiar car rolled slowly back into town. Aloan stepped out, breathing in air that smelled like pine and sunlight instead of snow. Nothing looked different, yet everything felt new. Mrs. Calder waited on the porch, eyes shining with relief she did not try to hide. "You came home," she said. Aloan smiled softly. "I told you I would." Inside the house, dust had been cleaned. Windows opened. Light filling rooms that once held only silence. But one thing remained exactly the same. The wooden steps out back, facing the wide open sky. That evening, Aloan sat there again, watching sunset paint the hills gold. Peace did not arrive loudly. It settled slowly, like trust returning, like breath finally deep enough to fill the lungs. She thought about the blue door, now sealed, empty, powerless. Secrets only survived in darkness, and darkness only survived in silence. Far away, a screen door closed. Someone laughed. A radio played an old gentle song. Ordinary life. Beautiful. Fragile. Worth protecting. Aloan closed her eyes, letting the sound of the living world surround her. For the first time, the silence felt honest. Not controlled. Not hiding. Just quiet. And in that quiet, she understood something Corvin had known all along. Good people do not change the world with noise. They change it by refusing to look away, by choosing truth when fear is easier, by opening doors others are afraid to touch. The sky deepened into evening blue, stars appearing one by one. Aloan breathed in slowly, then out, a calm, steady rhythm. The story had begun with a smile beside a grave, a tear no one understood. Now she understood. He had smiled because the truth would live, because she would carry it forward, because silence would not win. Her own lips curved gently, not from sadness, not from relief, from quiet promise. Somewhere in the distance, a single night wind moved through the trees, soft as a whisper, and this time, she was not afraid to hear it, because the final goodbye had never really been an ending, only the moment. A hidden door opened, and light finally stepped through.